The Stars and Stripes show is brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.
Well, it's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. 12:10 is your time across the nation. And of course, welcome to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy. And of course, you're speaking to Swift Mpoloka alongside Samantha Mokwe. Sammy, say what's up?
Good. How you doing?
Complaining doesn't pay my bills. And of course, welcome to America in Botswana, the Stars and Stripes radio show. And of course, today we're talking human rights for all. That includes the LGBTQI plus community. We have a very, very special guest to join us live on the phone from the United States. And of course, we would like to wish a warm welcome. We're speaking to the United States Presidential Special Envoy to advance the human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and of course intersex communities or persons. And of course, her name is Jessica Stern. How are you, Your Excellency? Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here, and I have to say, I know it takes a long time to say my title because it's the longest title in the entire State Department.
Very, very true. Thank you so much for taking the time. What time is it in the United States, if we may ask?
Oh, you may. It's 6 o'clock in the morning.
Top of the morning. Good morning. Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time. Okay.
It's a pleasure. I've got a cup of coffee in front of me.
Fantastic. Look, some folk in Botswana may not understand LGBTQI plus, and of course, especially in line with the I and the plus. Please give us a breakdown on what that means.
Absolutely. So I stands for intersex, which might be a newer term for some of the listeners.
Okay.
And that's fine. The LGBTQI plus community is always expanding and growing and trying to name people who've been historically forgotten. So intersex stands for a condition that's biological that refers to chromosomal or biological variation that produces results where people don't fit into the binary categories of male or female. So just to explain what this means, it's about as common as being an identical twin. So chances are you have met someone who's intersex in your life, and it basically means that someone who identifies as a woman like me might have some variations in their body that are a little bit atypical. So maybe they'll have a little bit more hair on their arms, or they'll have a slightly deeper voice. And we fight for intersex rights because no one should be told that they're less than just because their gender or their gender is perceived to be different than what's considered normal or common. And the plus is really important. It basically means we know not everybody identifies as LGBTQI. There's lots of locally specific words that reflects who people are, but everybody is welcome.
Wow. Okay. a lot of information there, but thank you for sharing with us. And now in Botswana in 2021, the country's highest court affirmed the fundamental rights of LGBTQI plus persons, which was a very big step, especially for us. This will hopefully lead to more elected LGBTQI persons in politics and other creative spaces. What do you think of this move?
Well, first of all, I really want to congratulate the LGBTQI activists of Botswana who fought so long to make that victory happen. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of many years of deliberate and persistent movement building and work with the courts. I think it's a great decision. You probably know that there are 6 other African countries that have decriminalized homosexuality. In fact, many of Botswana's neighbors have decriminalized homosexuality. So the trend is clear. The criminalization of LGBTQI people, that's a thing of the past. Seeing people for who they are, respecting all forms of consensual adult relationships should be the priority. And I think what's been great is to see how people in Botswana have really accepted the decision. The sky hasn't fallen down. Heterosexual couples still fall in love. So it just shows that when you decriminalize LGBTQI status, life continues as usual.
Absolutely. Look, inclusion in leadership is an important component. Let's talk about leadership within this space. You're doing a great job in your role. And of course, do you know any others also paving the way for the LGBTQI plus community?
Well, it's hard for me to just pick a couple of people. I've thought about some of the leaders from the African LGBTQI plus movement that have really set the stage for today. So a lot of your listeners may have heard about Simon Nkoli from South Africa, who is a gay, HIV positive, Black South African who was really active in tearing down apartheid. So he's the kind of leader who kind of set the stage for the work and accomplishments of today. And then I think about visual artists like Zanele Muholi, who've documented Black LGBTQI community members to humanize people, to show the variety of the community. And then, frankly, if you gave me 3 hours, I'd give you every name of every LGBTQI activist I've ever met because they're heroes walking among us.
At the beginning of our conversation, Swift actually mentioned, the office that you sit in, Special Envoy, U.S. Special Envoy to advance the human rights of lesbians, gay, bisexuals, transgender, queer, and intersex persons. And, somebody might be listening and they're wondering, what's the role of your office? What are the goals? What exactly do you do?
You know something? I ask myself the same question every day. What do I do? But the reason why I ask is because it's so important to work for human rights. And the real question is, how do you prioritize when the issue is so vast? Well, there are around 60 countries around the world that still criminalize LGBTQI status or conduct. And around 10 of those punish homosexuality with death. So one of my top priorities is fighting those laws. Another priority is fighting for legal gender recognition for trans and non-binary people. So what do I mean when I say that? It means that every person should have legal identity documents that reflect the name they're most comfortable with and an accurate gender marker. Another issue, and maybe this is the most important one, is my office is focused on fighting violence against LGBTQI plus people. And there's not a country on the planet that doesn't have violence against the community, but whether it's corrective rape, so-called conversion therapy practices, harm to intersex minors, we've got to put an end to it. And that takes many forms. There's always something we can do to move the needle forward.
Well, it's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. And if you've just joined us, welcome to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM, hashtag America in Botswana. And of course, today's theme is celebrating Pride Month. On the line, we're speaking to Her Excellency Jessica Stern, who is the U.S. Special Envoy to advance human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons. And of course, last question, and of course, we will be engaging you. We know that we're fast running out of time, and then sadly you'll be leaving the conversation in about 10 minutes. But let's talk about Pride Month. What is the origin of Pride Month, and how should we celebrate this amazing milestone?
Well, every country has its own origin story of where the LGBTQI rights movement, emerged and started to take up space. I'm from the United States. Here, that story begins at the Stonewall Rebellion. There was a bar in the West Village in Manhattan where, LGBTQI people would go to the bar, police would raid the bar, they would arrest people, or they would demand money in exchange for not taking them down to the police precinct. And of course, one day, the patrons just had enough. They fought back. They held their space. And thus, the movement for LGBTQI rights in the United States was born. And I have to say, that movement is now over 50 years old. It's not only changed the trajectory for LGBTQI Americans, but it's changed our country for the better because it's really a symbol of inclusion. And so every time Pride Month comes around, what I do two things. One, I appreciate the work we've done to get where we are today, more acceptance, more tolerance, more allies, but I also take stock of the work that's still on the horizon. What's unfinished? What else can we do to ensure that our LGBTQI family and neighbors and community members are safe and respected? And with that, I think there's always a good conversation to be had.
Well, it's Gabs FM Power to engage your world as we continue conversation. Samantha, we got some great guests in studio. And of course, Jessica, allow us to also bring in some LGBTQI plus activists in studio to join in the conversation. Samantha, kindly introduce our favorite people as we continue conversation.
Look, some of our favorite people, and I know some of the people who are joining in on this discussion personally. I nearly said on my right, and I realized nobody can actually see me right now. We've actually got Angelina Muntiwa, who is a human rights activist at Lesbians, Gays, and Bisexuals of Botswana. That's Lerabibo for people who don't know. That's what it is. That's what Angelina does there. She's found there. We've also got one of my good people over here, Onkokame Mosewu. But because
we call them onks.
But let me just use the proper official name here. Onkokame does, is a health and advocacy manager at Men's for Health and Gender Justice Organization. And of course, one of my favorite people as well. We've also got Katlego K. Kolanyane Kisupile, and she's an international award-winning cultural architect, publishing author, human rights advocate, and TED fellow. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So just a quick one. We're gonna ask all of you two questions, okay? These are the two questions that we'd like all of you to answer. And of course, as well as you, Jessica, please feel free to chip in where you'd like to, okay?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Look, let's start with yourself, Kat. A great deal of bias can be attributed to ignorance, right? What advice would you give to listeners who want to move beyond stereotypes and become more informed about the LGBTQI plus realities and aspirations for, basic acceptance as a human right in our society? What steps can an individual take towards inclusion and perhaps eventually, allyship? I know it's a mouthful, okay? And Onks and my good friend Angelina, I'm going to ask you the same question, okay? Go ahead, Kat.
I guess they've got more time. I just want to start by saying, hi, Jessica.
Hi, Kat.
It's been such a long time, and I love the fact that you're in the office that you're in, and keep doing the wonderful work. But
Thank you so much, my friend.
In response to your question, the fastest way of me responding to it is the fact that the internet is free and there's so many ways that you can learn. Ignorance is, for a long time, when I founded my theater festival in 2013,
okay,
the slogan was build hearts and open minds. And the impetus was to say we need to build a world where ignorance is a choice rather than a status of life, right? So it can't be the status quo. So you choose to be ignorant. You cannot say you don't understand issues that there are multiple publications, multiple articles, multiple videos, multiple songs. There's so many things that are available in the world. Mm-hmm. So go out and find the information. Finding information doesn't mean you will like it.
Yeah.
But the fact is, find the information and learn. The LGBTQI movement has had to learn how to. We can't resist something we don't know, right? So we've had to learn what is happening on the other side. Same thing. If you're going to be resisting without knowing what you're resisting, all we are human beings. So if you want to learn a little bit more, go and learn. It's there. It's free.
Absolutely. Let's bring Onks into the conversation. What would you add on to that?
Great. Thanks. I think for me, the greatest thing, it's really to establish if you have interest or intention to learn how to live with other people, because essentially that's where it comes from.
Yeah, your motive.
So if the motive and interest is clear, then it's really just looking around. How do I ensure that nobody else I interact with leaves feeling less of a human being? Mm-hmm. And if you're able to put yourself in those feet, somebody's feet in someone's life, and just think, if I could be treated this way, how would my life be like, right? So kind of looking at people from a different perspective. And so that's what I really think. I think if the intention is clear, if you want to change, I do believe people can change. I also deeply believe that we have the right to hold opinions, so it's okay if you don't think LGBTI people are good people. Yeah. It's okay if you don't think they are, you want to accept them. Those are your thoughts. But I definitely feel like in this world where we live in, we have a responsibility to make sure that we coexist. And how does that mean? How does that look like? That means I should be able to treat the next person the same way I would expect to be treated. And I think it really stems from a perspective of humanity. And ask yourself, and I think the ideals of changing or learning, it has to be very intentional. It has to be personal. You have to want to change, and you have to kind of be able to envision the kind of change that you want to see, and then pull yourself to be that change in that society. And I think the other thing is also, listen, like Kat said, really everyone is on their phone. At a mall, in the traffic, at a shop, at church, someone is on their phone. So just a minute to really just Google it up, check how can I change? What can I do? And I think the most important thing is to listen. Listen to the LGBTI community, listen to communities who are working with LGBTI persons. And before deciding this is what my change would look like, try to listen what the LGBTI persons are actually saying and how they would like to be treated. And I think a lot of things will be much better in that sense. But really at the depth of it all, humanity, treating everyone else with respect, treating everyone else with dignity, be it, you're in the healthcare services or social protection, whatever it is, just say everybody that I engage with on a daily should not leave feeling less of a human, because of my opinions or thoughts or stereotypes.
Fantastic. But before I bring in Angelina, let me ask Jessica to chip in, because unfortunately we have to let go of her in under 3 minutes. Your Excellency, would you like to chip into the conversation? And of course, let me afford you this opportunity to share your parting statement, as we do know I'm sure it's coming to 6:30 in the US where you are.
It is, my friend. Well, these are great questions. The first one I would just say, there's a myth that we don't know someone who's LGBTQ or I, and that's not true. We've all met someone who's a member of this community. So the first thing I just want to emphasize to anyone who's curious or uncertain, these are not people who are totally unfamiliar to you. It could be a member of your family. It could be, someone you went to school with. Someone who's LGBTQ or I. The question is, did they feel safe coming out to you? And it's our responsibility to create the conditions so that everyone feels safe being their full selves. And I think there's a simple principle that guides those interactions, and it's love your neighbor. So LGBTQI plus persons just want to be treated equally like everybody else. And as long as you're putting that kind of respect out into the world, then LGBTQI people are going to feel safer around you. And then just the last piece I want to emphasize for those allies out there who are trying to learn, just be curious. That's all it takes. Stop and ask an LGBTQI person, what's going on for you? What are your struggles? How can I show up for you? How can I show you respect? What are your pronouns? How can I be a good ally for you at work? So it takes many forms. There's not one thing. I think what, Unks and Kat have said that I really agree with is what it comes down to is just showing up for people. And I guess I would just say in conclusion, Botswana is really punching above its weight on the regional and global stage in terms of LGBTQI issues. You have strong leaders at the community level, like all three of the people who are on your panel today. And because there is this wave of progress and momentum in the African context, we really value seeing governments like the government of Botswana do the right thing and then tell their story on the world stage. And I'll just conclude by saying, if every government in the world took a step forward for LGBTQI rights, we could do away with violence. We could do away with discrimination. And what we would get is safety and security for all people. And I can't think of a much better goal for us to have for our societies and countries.
Well, it's Gabs FM, power to engage your world. Thank you so much. And of course, if you're wondering who we're speaking to the U.S. Special Envoy to advance human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex plus persons. And of course, thank you so much, Your Excellency. Have a fantastic day and enjoy the coffee, okay?
It's a pleasure. Happy Pride.
Do you guys want to say bye?
Bye, Jessica.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Have a fantastic day. On the other side of this, we're going to continue the conversation. Please do not change that dial. And of course, welcome to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. And of course, the show theme of today is Pride Month.
The Stars and Stripes show is brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.
Well, it's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. And of course, welcome back to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. Hashtag America in Botswana. And remember, the objective of this particular show is to highlight the bilateral relationship between the BW government and the U.S. government in large shared prosperity and shared health. Let's go, Samantha.
Let's continue with the discussion. I think this is about time where we bring Angelina to the conversation.
Yes, shame. We closed that out 2 minutes.
So yeah, let's continue. We've been talking to the special envoy about this, but I'd like to bring this back up since it's been an important milestone, especially in Botswana, where we saw in 2021 an amazing success with the decriminalization when the highest court affirmed the fundamental rights of the LGBTQI persons community. What do you believe the priorities should be for Botswana now? And then also, do you feel that Botswana, the people, the government, are we playing a constructive role when it comes to, the respect of human rights, the respect of rights of the LGBTQI persons? What can we do more of?
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
No, it's really a lot. I think maybe something that I always make a habit of correcting, the decriminalization wasn't of same-sex relationships. Homosexuality or same-sex relationships have never been illegal in Botswana or in the constitution. But rather this was challenging one of the constitutional,
the penal
section,
code, yeah.
Yes, the penal code. Thank you. That was for same-sex sexual practices, but also even that was an insinuation. So I think to get to the answer, after the decrim being won, much as it was the biggest achievement, I think we've also come to realize that sometimes passing the law doesn't necessarily mean that it's institutionalized instantly, because we're still meeting a lot of challenges. The first challenge was just the penal code itself. We wanted action. We wanted the penal code to be changed. We wanted there to be that written or it taken out, especially for people at the police college. How do we bring about a new era where people learn the penal code with that section being taken out as it was supposed to? And then when we talk other institutions, we know that there's even more work to be done, because we have roused a few religious leaders, we've roused a few traditional leaders, but we've also made so much effort in having allies within the religious leaders, within some religious fraternities, as well as traditional leaders. But we've also at the same time realized that now more than anything, the conversations modicombeing is so homosexuality, and I think it goes back to the ignorance. How you go what was the status of homosexuality in your country, in your laws? So has it all this attention that they're seeing on the media and the progress that's been made, the reactions they just come at or as personal attributes of a person who has their own say about the situation.
Biases.
The bias.
Yeah,
yes.
biases.
Yeah, and I do want to say that, one of the most important things is that we, in the consultations that some of us have done with the folks on the ground or the leaders on the ground, their greatest plea has been, it's not just what the courts say, we need to know so we can help the people we are living with. So it is not enough for the Court of Appeals to pass a law and then the Parliament not to ascend it into. And so for the Court of Appeals makes a decision, the Parliament has and they're the only people with the right to make it a law, right? So unless Parliament does any work, it's just an opinion from some judges, firstly. And beyond that, as people who are within the state of Botswana, it's not going to be their thing where they're like, okay, cool, great, let's go sit with the judges at the Court of Appeal. So it is incumbent upon the state and all the leaders within the state who produce the gazettes, who produce all these other means of information. As we said, ignorance must be a choice. And unfortunately, a lot of our leaders are ignorant because the information is not being filtered down to them. It's not being given to them in a way that they're able to then hand down to the people that they live with and they are supposed to then be leading, right? I know that one of the most fundamental things that I always say to people about leadership is the fact that I heard somebody say, you can't call yourself a leader if there's nobody following, because otherwise you're just a person taking a walk. And at this point in time, we can't have the leaders being the people who are taking walks knowing that LGBTQ rights need to be affirmed. And then the people they must be leading, who should be following them, aren't given this information. And I mean, I have avenues that are in Botswana so that people can access some of the stuff, Botswana. But again, it's still restricted. We are doing so much work to intervene, but we can't do it. We cannot leave educating the entire community and society to NGOs and civil society. It must be done with the state there as well.
Let me bring in Remuswe. How are key cultural shifts being made in Botswana that can grow people's understanding and, of course, their perceptions of the queer community?
I think, like Kat is saying, it gets frustrating if no one is going to the custodians of culture to equip them with that. As much as we say everybody has a responsibility to learn, and we should be having someone to be able to run with that show, run with that project, ensuring that within different cultural spaces, people understand what this means. I think there has been a question of Melawena, the court ruling, how do they affect regular Botswana on the road? How do they affect regular LGBTI person in Shakashogwe, Sorowe, Palape, Kanye, anywhere really? And someone has to cascade it down to say this is how it affects each and every, how you live your life every day. Because essentially these are livelihoods of people. It's not just about who you choose to fall in love. It's your access to equitable health service. It's your access to fair employment. It's your access to just to constantly navigate in social spaces. So I think culture is two-layered. Of course, we have custodians of culture, but it's also about how we live each and every day. I know Hodle Khabibo has been doing some work. Men for Health has in the past also engaged with Dukhosi. I know Kat has also been doing a number of work, and there's a great leaf of activists in Botswana, not just queer people, but people who believe in equality, who believe in principles of inclusion and representation and visibility. We've seen an uprise of digital activists who are doing a new wave of activism using technology. We have people like Bukodia who've been doing this for quite some time and really amplifying to show the lives of ordinary LGBTI persons. So not Kat, not Kane, because what about has seen again. So maybe but a regular Lerato, a regular Bilediwa, Botswana, how does that affect you and how does that affect your life? And why is it important for people around you? And like I said, it's really livelihoods of people. To stigma and discrimination, se affect the young, negatively impacts ordinary lives, I think we'll be going somewhere. But I think
Botswana lives.
Stories of, and I think that, telling stories, extraordinary stories of ordinary Botswana LGBTI persons, of how a trans person every morning has to leave from Moditsane, go into every morning that I'm going through a taxi station, that the worst could happen, but they still choose hope, they still choose resilience, they still choose to live their lives authentically. So I think those are the little LGBTI people are telling their stories and their lives. They're using their lives as advocacy tools and the blueprint, and this is our lives and we are here. And I think it's beautiful to watch. It would be great to have everybody, our stakeholders, everybody come in, to show meaningful solidarity, saying halaya, ya flaga, not just showing the rainbow flag once in a year, but actually practically what does that mean when we celebrate Pride Month? What does that mean in the office, in our different space, in our different communities? How does that translate down?
Well, it's Gabs FM, power to engage your world. If you've just joined us, welcome to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. And of course, today's show theme is celebrating Pride Month. Angelina, let me bring you back. Kat, I got you. I know we're going to hear from you, but allow me to bring Angelina back into the conversation. And let's talk about what steps will have been taken for the LGBTQI plus community to have, moved from tolerance to acceptance as a protected class in Botswana. What does this look like? I mean, you're a foot soldier on the ground. You sort of have your finger on the pulse to say, where are we? Are we winning? Are we losing? Are we moving somewhere? Are we progressing towards our goal as a nation?
Okay, I think, the word tolerance always gives me chills.
Why?
But I think because with tolerance, you're just basically saying, okay, sure, okay, yes, Angie, you're a pansexual, but don't invade my space, So, I mean, it's really like we're giving power to others over others.
Yeah.
And I think now when we talk acceptance, that's better. It's in between, but I think we need to push to a more positive aspect of appreciation and being able to appreciate diversity. And I think the most important thing to also mention is how we have values and attitudes are very important, and we need to move away from the boxing and the divide, where, I know we're socialized and conditioned to judge each other, and we create this them, us, and then there's the other out there, and that's some of the things that really maybe are fueled by our gender norms, that are fueled by Botswana being partially a conservative country, and we still have a lot to unlearn. And I think what we need to do more is emphasize on teaching people to have empathy, just to put themselves in people's shoes. I think like what Rati was saying, sometimes we don't know the experiences that people go through, and that's the most painful part about it. Yeah.
I think let's bring you into the conversation, Kat. I know you, yes, you're an activist, but I'd like to say you're an artist, you're a creative. And as shared a bit earlier on the show, LGBTQI plus community is not a monolith, but a clear spectrum. What efforts are being made to ensure that all aspects are represented, are heard in society, and what active engagement is taking place to combat just marginalization of this community?
I think, as you said, we are not monolithic, and the idea that when we talk about, Botswana or a Motswana, right? A Motswana who doesn't eat beef, to some people seems like it's impossible. But then you think about the people who dwell on the riverbanks, who know hore taipi is what they eat. That's their protein, right? So when we even think, and the reason I bring this in is so that people start to understand when we start talking about community, when we start talking about LGBTQ plus persons, we are talking about as different as ke hodile ko Konokeng, ke hodile in the desert, ke hodile in Gaborone, and ha ke re ke a gae, I'm in Gaborone. Haikitsu Moraka, all those sorts of things. So with LGBTQ plus persons, we are seeing, as Ratanang has stated, Unkokame has stated, I feel like you of the multiple names, as Unkokame stated, there are efforts being done by initiatives such as those guys. They run a website called Sitabane, which is again a reappropriation of the term. We've got Banana Club, who have been hosting dialogues. They've been supported by the EU delegation in Botswana. They've managed to find supporters from multiple spaces. I've personally been professionally engaged by Alliance Française de Gaborone. So there are multiple spaces that are not of Botswana that are saying, let's give Botswana the means of forwarding their voices. We've got films, they're available. We've got songs, they're available. There are so many things that are being done. The only thing is ensuring that people aren't running away and feeling as though they're breaking the law by actually acknowledging that we exist. We saw over COVID how when it came time to do the messaging for ways of staying safe, all of a sudden we knew languages from all across the country.
True story.
All of a sudden. But we don't have these. Where's the content outside of COVID? Right? So yes, we need to have these platforms to give people space so that they don't feel as though they need to know English and in order to understand tolerance, or in order to be people who understand what gender is. Setswana is a gender neutral language, and that is something that we can celebrate, but also might work in our detriment, because to some degree, how Thabo guy, you don't care. But when Thabo is trans, right? When Thabo is, so when you say, where's Thabo? If Thabo wants you to know, I am the transgender Thabo, as opposed to just Thabo, then you need to acknowledge it somehow within your language. And that language will not happen if the people who use the language don't help it grow. Yeah. So yes, we create mediums, we create stuff. It's already there. We just need to get to the point where more and more platforms are being given so that people can consume it.
Absolutely.
So I would love to see an LGBTQ plus film. I have a documentary series. I would love to see it on BTV.
Yes.
There are multiple things that we can give now.
Yes. Well, it's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. If you've just joined us, welcome to the show. You're on the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. And of course, today we're celebrating Pride Month. Allow me to do this, and we'll continue conversation on the other side of this.
Francistown. Power to engage your world is on 96.8 FM.
It's Gabs FM, powered to engage your world. Your time across the nation is 12:51. And of course, welcome to the Stars and Stripes radio show, proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy in partnership with Gabs FM. And of course, Samantha, we are celebrating Pride Month. And of course, shout out to the U.S. Embassy, shout out to the BW government, shout out to the U.S. government. That goes to show partnership in line with human rights is very, very important, because at the end of the day, we are part and parcel of the human race.
Definitely. Now, this one is for you, Angelina, and I'd like to bring this up. I think a little bit earlier on, somebody else touched on this, but I'd like to find out, your ideas on this. Civil rights movements across the world have demonstrated just the importance of the oppressed in the LGBTQI plus community being able to share their stories in their own voices. I want to find out from you, how is this being done, specifically Rilibile mo Botswana, because you are an activist, you know what's happening. How are the stories being told, right in our, I don't even want to say backyard, front yard, more like being.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much. That one is actually very close to home. I think Rati did say lengthy about that one. Yes, and I laughed that. I really loved that. But I think because it seems we're doing a lot of tokenism, especially even us as queer activists. I mean, I know I'm also in the queer spectrum, but I think sometimes we become so involved and we don't so much allow for representation. But at the same time, it's amazing to appreciate, like what Kat said also, a lot of people are out there. Each individual who is queer, each individual is taking part. We have shared experiences. We have booklets that have been documented about docu-series. We also have human rights violations, even though those are the sort of hard ones, but that's someone actually saying out their voice. Some of the things are actually not said out there, but we've registered a lot of correction rape cases. We still have conversion therapy. It's happening to our very close friends, and these are cases, some we've even received this very year, conversion therapy, and those are heartbreaking issues. We also have individuals who stand up to be litigants, as a trace back from when we had Little standing up to be one of the people who had said that I want to stand up and actually take action in recognizing human rights for the LGBTIQ+. So every day someone is doing something, and I think it's a bit unfair that with all the work that has been done, all the teaching that has been done, we still have to use ourselves. We still have to do most of the work, because I believe, again, what Kat said, the government needs to be the biggest ally. They need to be the one. They talk a lot about how the Constitution is protecting rights of people and against all forms of discrimination. And let me tell you, each time a government official says the speech of against all forms of discrimination, they're going to give examples of religion, maybe this one and that one. They say sex. They will not say sexual orientation. Go to the inna ETC, and it shouldn't be ETC anymore. They need to be the one doing the job more than us. Well,
it's Gabs FM Power to Engage Your World. We're fast running out of time, so in order to close the show, allow me to give each and every one of you 1 minute to just share your parting statements, not only as activists, but as Botswana, as people who are living within society, as people that know the realities of what is going on the ground. And I don't know who I think
also you need to how can we do better?
Great stuff. I'll start. Two things. One, Pride is not really only about LGBTI persons. Yes. Pride is really a platform to say, how do we ensure that everybody else lives the best quality of their lives, right? So let's not look at it as, oh, it's a gay thing, or it's a lesbian thing. Think about it. People with disability. What are you doing to ensure that people with disability in your office, in your family, are able to live quality lives? People living with HIV, whatever it is, find what it is that you find your pride to be and work on it. My pattern thing, it's really a question that I love to ask. When I do trainings and engagements with communities and people, I often like to ask, where is the source of your discomfort in letting another person live a quality life, right? Like that. If you can find where the source of your discomfort in assisting a trans person or a lesbian woman or a gay man, if you can find the source of your discomfort, then maybe we can be able to help you. What happens if you can be able to identify that? Then we are moving. But if you can't identify it,
thank you.
Do better.
Angelina, I can give you 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Go. Thank you so much for having us. I think my parting words is that we cannot change where and how we were born or how we live. But while we give merit to human rights and them being intertwined with religion and or culture, there's also a need for us to factor in how discrimination and ill treatment of minority groups by these very certain institutions also violates humanity. I usually love saying that human dignity to me is the basic intrinsic value of all humanity. And we just need to be more kind. Yeah.
Absolutely. Kat,
I'm not going to be verbose. Yes, thank you very much. To echo what Ratnang said, please understand that. And what Jessica also said, I know I have a mother who will do everything to protect me. And she has been a great champion in my life personally, and I dare to say she's been a champion in other people's children's lives, because she doesn't she never shies away from the fact that I am her child. So when it is a matter of me being this very vocal, trans-identifying, non-binary person from Botswana on the global stage and on the local stage, it is a matter of saying, acknowledge we exist, one, but two, where you need to tell people, no, that's not right to say that. Because for every single time that you say to somebody, that is you making a difference. That is you saying, I feel uncomfortable with you doing these things around me, and I shan't let you do these anymore. So just acknowledge that we exist and we live, and love yourself.
Thank you so much.
Can I say one
We
thing?
have run out of time. We're going into the news. Sorry about that. Tomorrow on the June 17th, we have Pride March in Botswana. This is a commemoration of the International Day Against Homophobia, Biophobia, and Transphobia. And of course, the theme is IDAHOBIT. Together, always united in diversity. This Pride Month, the Pride March is an opportunity to celebrate and, of course, embrace our differences in a unified manner with the LGBTQI plus community. This is an opportunity for civil society organizations and, of course, reps, public and private organizations, and the public at large to come together and share ideas and opportunities beyond decriminalization.
The Stars and Stripes show was brought to you by the U.S. Embassy.